Hello! Welcome to the Mindbuffs podcast. I am your host, Matt Demoissac, and I'm here for episode 3 with none other than Mr. Nick Johnson.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for that very kind intro.
You're welcome. So in our first 2 episodes, we got to hear some really cool stories just about your kind of journey up through the ranks in hockey to your professional years. We then nerded out a lot about identity foreclosure since we both wrote our capstone kind of thesis in grad school on that concept. And we're going to extrapolate a bit more on that. And also just kind of talking about how our identity evolves and how sometimes we think that we need to change who we are, change our identity as we play more like in higher levels, play more competitive sport. And just kind of like challenging that notion. Yet, it definitely is an experience that I think many of us feel like, oh, I must be someone else now that I'm playing at this level. Really just kind of challenging that, even hearing some of like Nick's stories talking about that. But I was kind of curious for you, Nick, what from those first 2 conversations we've had really stuck out for you as things that maybe you wanted to explore a bit more.
Yeah, I think it's always nice to reflect on our own journeys and just kind of draw more wisdom, I guess, from now and looking back and things like that. So I think when you had mentioned, your low handicap of 10, and then you just kind of described how getting back into competitive, trying to compete at something, and golf was what it was, but how it kind of just like floored you right back into when you're 19 or younger, and just having a flurry of thoughts and I got to do this, and you felt like you weren't maybe connected with your more true self or your more true kind of identity that you've probably had to reflect on a lot over the years, and it's kind of the best for you now. I found that really, really fascinating how you could even feel it. Like it was like a really kind of almost like a dichotomous thing where you were like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah.
So yeah, I found that to be really fascinating. I'm sure on some level it's kind of making my gear spin too about how I've, when I approach sport these days. So I don't know. Yeah. Tell me more about kind of the feeling you got.
Yeah. It's funny. Even you just mentioning that, like I can literally feel things moving in my body, like feeling uncomfortable and having really vivid memories of like being on the first tee box for, that first like amateur tournament. And, in our first couple episodes, we had kind of talked about how, we need to experience identity moratorium, which is this space where we explore all aspects of self and really try to nurture like all the different parts of ourselves, all the different parts of our life, so that we can have a more sustainable identity that can kind of take the blows, the hits, the surprises of life without it kind of feeling catastrophic. And, I feel like I did that with every other aspect of my identity except for my athletic one, because that one was kind of put on hold. Like when my career ended at 19, where like I just was never going to be able to play any type of like contact sport ever again. I kind of shelved that part of myself. I think I thought that when I started coaching high level sport, that was the same identity, that I was just kind of like channeling that younger athletic identity into like this new coaching identity. But clearly last year, when I was the one responsible for the actual performance, I had not nurtured my athletic identity, and it did not go very well.
That's interesting you say that. Yeah. I'm just getting a flashback to like my last day of pro in Sweden, game 7 against HV71 in Jönköping, Sweden. I wasn't playing. I was kind of like out of the lineup most of the thing, but just like remembering the feelings of how strange it was. And I think I have done a decent job at like processing all that. Mm-hmm. But I'd love to hear more kind of where you're going to that, like how it was kind of like a full stop. And I think kind of what you're saying, that you thought maybe the coaching would kind of continue that identity moratorium in a way, but I'm sure there was threads that definitely did.
Yeah.
But maybe the bulk of it was still like less touched than you thought.
Yeah, because like as a coach, like the focus isn't on you. I mean, some coaches think it is, and that's where you get toxic coaching.
That's why we're here.
Yeah. But like, again, it was focused back on that value of mine, which is like connection. That like, I know that I'm my best when I'm connecting with other people around me. And so when I go to an individual sport,
Mm-hmm.
where it's so easy to think that like you are, no man is an island, but like I thought that I was an island.
Mm-hmm.
I literally remember the moment. It was kind of like that Happy Gilmore scene where he was experiencing it positively, I was experiencing it negatively, where all of a sudden he just like focuses on like where he wants to hit the ball, and the camera like moves super fast to like the destination. For me, it felt like the camera went from having that wide zoom of the beauty, the other people, just how amazing the experience was to be back in like, competitive sport again. And it felt like the camera was actually retreating back into myself, and that I became acutely aware of how uncomfortable I felt, of how much I felt like, especially like as a sports psychologist, that I needed to perform well to like prove to others that like I know my shit, and that I'm able to like, use the things that I preach. And all of a sudden, all of these expectations that I put on myself, it felt like I was a teenager again. The same kind of mindset that prevented me from being as consistent as I know I could have been earlier in my career. And I couldn't shake it until like the second round. Like my entire first round was like just fighting this teenager inside of me that thought like, it was his time to shine again. And it was just such a gross experience, man. Like, I felt so bad.
I just liked your comment about like the coach is going to bench you for the next hole or something like that. Yeah. I found it really interesting how you were like, like the camera kind of, you felt like it was kind of more of like an internal focus in a way, or like, tasks inside of yourself. You had to perfect all these things to perform.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, like how you can kind of visualize that, like you can focus on such a kind of grander scale, a more wide zoom scale, more like you can kind of be more places at once with different people. You can have it's kind of a flow state for you probably.
Yeah.
But then those roots, those threads, I don't know what from our past that just like, nope, come right back to me.
Yeah.
Like I'm here waiting for you.
Like if you wanted to get into it, like I know how all of these narratives like weave together as to like why, like, I felt that way and feel that way in competitive spaces. But, I had a dad who played professional hockey as well. So, and there's just a lot of successful people in my family, whether it's business or athletics. So there's always kind of been this subliminal expectation of like, I need to excel at the things that like I put my time and effort into. And I can think back of some of the best games I ever played. They were like when I was like 13, 14, a couple at 15. But as like the pressure increased by playing like AAA, like hockey, it was like I lost sight of when I was my best. I didn't do it like consciously. Like it was, I can literally feel the difference between that flow state feeling of actually being aware of everything around me. And that's a good thing, because I think a lot of people mistake being in the zone as like just focusing on yourself. And that's actually not flow state. Like that prevents you from having any peripheral awareness in your sport. And you actually become kind of shit at reacting to the moment. So I know that for me, I start performing really poorly when I am just thinking about myself, thinking about how uncomfortable I'm feeling, thinking about, to your point, like how perfect I need to be to succeed in that moment. And like, I didn't want to, but it literally felt like this teenager woke up out of bed after, sleeping for 16 years and like flipped the switch and went, okay, I got it from here now. And it was just the most uncomfortable situation.
Yeah. So tell me more about that. It sounds like it took a round or two, but ultimately I feel like that's a normal reaction to not maybe competing for a long time. Something like this is, it's not unexpected in a way, even though maybe I don't know if I'd expect that either. It sounds like you didn't expect it, but what did your true identity, what did your kind of true flow state maybe kind of like wisdom, like what can you take out of that? Like how was the battle won over that teenager? How was the battle won to get you out of that space and to be like, how did you almost like defeat the teenager's arguments, or how, like, what lessons can we actually learn from that?
So I think the issue was that I was actually trying to defeat the teenager.
Oh, okay.
And instead of kind of accepting it, I realized that kind of to get a little existential now, that there's like this, I think I'd say like 16 or 17-year-old teenage hockey player part of me that I've kind of abandoned, that I have a lot of like resentment towards.
Yeah.
And so when I noticed it, I think I got really angry that I thought like I wasn't going to feel like this ever again, or that I thought it was like beyond that experience. And so rather than like defeating, I basically, it's so funny. This feels embarrassing to say, but like it's what happened. Basically bawled my eyes out on the way home after the first tournament, mostly from embarrassment that I still felt that way, that I still acted like that teenager self. But I think what was important was that I actually needed to grieve that part of my life. I think even though I did go to therapy, like after my like career ended in a blaze of glory, that I really hadn't fully grieved the fact that, I committed, 12 years of my life to something fully. And I had very little say when it came to when I stopped being that person.
Yeah.
So I think what the tournament really allowed me to do was to finally grieve that chapter of my life. So yeah, it was quite a wild experience for me.
Thanks for sharing that. I mean, I think, they say in like parts work, like internal family systems, but like, looking at our parts, often that 16-year-old probably had some sort of needs and some sort of place in your life. And maybe you made a rule to never be in that mindset again or something, some sort of vow, to stay away from thinking a certain way. But it's like, it's powerful how you kind of just like accepted that, but also gave it space to be like, you know what, that did suck. Like that was tough. And I haven't maybe fully got there. It's like, I think it's a misconception that we have to like let the past die or let it full stop, kind of like move on, but threads stay with us. And it's like, how do we integrate those into ourselves, or how do we just like listen, but also be like, okay, well, there's a more mature way now, or whatever, kind of however you want to frame that. Thanks for sharing that. That's amazing.
Yeah. It's funny. As soon as you started saying that, like I actually know why I kind of abandoned that part of myself. I think like after going through therapy and starting to kind of build a life outside of sport and build some really amazing friendships and start working like everyone else, I never wanted to feel like I had to prove myself ever again. And I think when I think about that 16-year-old, it was like this feeling of like, fucking notice me. Cause like I was very alone as a teenager and people only knew me as a hockey player. So again, just adding to how easy it was for me to become foreclosed, that people only ever knew me as like the fastest hockey player they'd ever seen. And they only cared about my stats and did I win the day before. And so I think at 19, I was like, I never want to feel like I do things to like prove to people that I'm good enough. And it just felt so gross at 35 to feel that way again, that I needed to prove to the group I was with, to prove to the team of Mindbuffs, my friends and family, that like, oh man, like I still got it. Like, look at me go. And I play so bad.
Yeah, no, I get feelings like that too. Even just that Thursday hockey, like, make a good play, bad play, and it's like judgment. And it feels like really familiar, even though it's like, moved on in lots of ways. And even at the end of my career, it wasn't quite as present as earlier on. But still, some of those things kind of stick with you. And yeah, that was powerful. Thank you.
Yeah, no, actually, thanks for asking. In some way, I'm kind of grieving a little bit even now as we speak. Like I'm not done grieving.
Yeah.
It's not like we have one good cry. It's like, sweet, I'm over it. Like,
right.
like it's a process. But if you don't mind me asking, just because like we do play like hockey together now and have those skates, I don't think I've ever actually really asked, especially someone who's played at a professional level in sport, what is it like for you playing the sport you grew up playing, but after your career? Like what is that like for you?
Yeah, it's funny. I'll quickly mention, I think I heard it on Huberman Lab.
Okay.
When you monetize or incentivize something you love, even though you love it at first, as soon as you kind of take that money away, it changes it a lot, or it changes your motivations for playing.
Right.
So it's funny, like in a way that hasn't touched me, but in another way it has. Like when I was still playing, you kind of realize how, one, it truly is objectively a pretty difficult life, or it's like a pretty difficult task that you're asked to do every day, 6 days a week, maybe 4 days off a month. So you get a little bit of cynicism maybe towards it. I really started to hate the game, but I always kind of loved the sport. But getting paid to do the sport changes your relationship with it. So it did take me a little bit of time, but I feel like even now, heading out for, 1 a week, 2 a week, I still really do love trying to make plays and just skating and passing, shooting, whatever.
Yeah.
So I do really, if I didn't, I wouldn't go, right? Like I really do love it. I really do try to make cool plays or like try to score. And yeah, no, I super enjoy it. I like it when it's competitive, but not that competitive. But it is different, like the way I had to play as a pro versus like on a rec skate. So it's like, that is kind of unique. I don't know how I would handle, say they threw me with Stony Plain Eagles or something like that, like a level I could kind of handle, assuming I got back in shape. Like I bet you I'd have a similar reaction. I'd get a lot of strange old patterns reemerge. Yeah, I don't know. I think in some ways I'd have more wisdom into the game. I'd have more of a better perspective on how to apply myself fully or like to really go for it. I think even I was lucky enough to have some time away here and there during the hockey journey and like during the lockout, but also when I had that concussion.
Yeah.
I really I don't know. I think I used those times really well. Or even I was like healthy scratch for a couple of games when I first got to Minnesota. And it's like just watching the game from 50 feet up in the press box, like you kind of get better unless you're just bitter and like, this is stupid. Like I have way more time out there than I think. It's different now. Still have the love of the sport for sure.
Okay. Yeah. Cause like, I know like I've talked to like other, like former pro hockey players and like Olympians, people that reach the highest level and some are like, I'll never play my sport again. Like, I achieved everything I could, or like, I'll never be able to play at that level. So, I don't want to be a part of it.
What's the point? Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Like that. Yeah.
And so like, I don't know where you fall within that. And then the second thing, that I've kind of heard from people is like, I'll never be able to be like competitive again, even if I do play. So you're just kind of like going through the motions is kind of what I've kind of insinuated from talking to some of those other athletes. So I guess like for you, like, have you experienced flow state as a hockey player, like post career?
I'd say yeah.
Okay.
For sure. It's hard to say. What I found hard, if I don't warm up with like a quick workout, I find it harder to just do the tasks, like, use the skill and like feel like I know what I'm doing. Like just my legs feel awful. So I kind of need something like that to get my body going. And I like doing that because it actually makes me feel way better after. I'm just so sore, my neck, I get headaches and stuff like that. But certainly there are moments where like I'll just make a nice move or a nice shot or like things work out, but it's also like I feel in touch with the ice, with the puck. I feel like I'm in touch with, spatially with everything going on. I'm in the right place. I'm skating the right speed. Like I feel like there's lots of moments like that. I would say for sure.
Okay.
I experienced that. And as a sports psych, I'm very curious, like how can I kind of get in those moments, but also, like I like our skates because it's a lot of back and forth and we'll be down like 6 goals and that can happen. And it's like really interesting to just like, I don't know, not get negative and just like kind of work on our craft a little bit. I find it really fun actually.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Cause I think I've definitely noticed like watching like you play the games where you're like, you're really feeling it and like in flow and the games where like your body just ain't it that day.
Yeah. Like it just like passes explode and I'm not on. And so I think that is a little bit like, I had years of competitive full warm up, 20-minute or 45-minute off ice warm up and a 20-minute on ice warm up. And so like not having that before a skate is like kind of different, right?
Totally.
Yeah, like I don't know, it's nice with no pressure, no expectations, just like I wonder how it like that would be a cool mental exercise of like, okay, if say tonight was like, a huge game for me, say I had to sign another contract or something like that, and like I had to perform tonight, like it'd be really interesting how things might be different or the same.
What part of you would show up?
Yeah, I think it would be, I don't know, like it would be cool. I don't know if you can really recreate that, but
Yeah. Like when just kind of thinking it back to like the second round that I had in that tournament, in the golf tournament. No, I was more myself. I made a concerted effort. It's funny actually. I made this little booklet. Such a sports psych. I made a little booklet after the first round. I was like, okay, like I need, clearly I'm not in a place where I can trust that I can just be myself. Like there's this younger part that still is trying to hijack like
yeah,
my prefrontal cortex. And so I bought this little book and I wrote down a bunch of truths about like who I am, what I want my relationship to the sport to be, and kind of like what are just a handful of like final swing thoughts I can have just to make sure that like my brain is focusing on like the most important thing in that moment. So this little book of little quotes and sayings, things that I do hold dear, like as a sports psych, playing other sports, like just being with other people. And so I made an effort like before every shot to like open this book because I also doubled it as like my yardage book. So
yeah,
like I
right.
had to look at it for certain
Yeah,
yardages.
yeah,
So I was like, oh, okay, right. So I had these visual cues. And that's why those visual cues, like when we're working with our athletes, are so important. Is that like, yeah, we get it. We don't expect that you're gonna automatically remember everything that we've done in session and be able to implement it immediately. We need those visual or those verbal reminders so that it can eventually become new procedural memory where it's just kind of happening automatically. So like in my second round, it was still a fight. Like I felt that freaking teenager like
mhm,
every hole, but I at least had something that was more effective at pulling me away from that fight and just getting back to the focus that I typically have when I'm just playing with my friends. But yeah, like even as a sports psych, even playing at a higher level and in a lot of sports I grew up playing, we still have to work at it. Like it's not just automatic, it's not just easy.
yeah. Some of my best games, I feel like over time, it felt like a battle inside. Like, I had to. I remember this time in Calgary with Phoenix. I think we were on for a goal against early. It was kind of my man. I just didn't get to the point to block it, and then the shot got through. Maybe a rebound goal or something against, and whatever. I kept getting shifts, so that was a good sign.
Yeah.
But still, I remember in the second, the bench was kind of quiet. There was like some sort of moment of like, you're trying, you're exerting yourself, you're tired, and then it's like, oh, I'd rather just kind of sit here and kind of join the mood of the bench.
Oh yeah.
But I knew like for my own game, that wasn't good. And so it was like, yeah, like a sword fight really in my mind. You're trying to like get that positive belief zone mode, whatever turned on. And it feels like it's like takes energy, right?
Yes.
But I do think it's like kind of one of those things when the ball's rolling, then it's like more
Yeah.
automatic and maybe I guess what flow state could
Yeah.
come easier from that. Yeah, like I remember it's like frick, like this positive thinking stuff is kind of hard. Like it's not just like it's not so simple, right? It takes effort for sure.
Definitely.
Anyways, I had a good end of the game and stuff, but
Huh.
I actually scored. That was my first goal in front of my dad and mom too. So
Oh, cool.
so I played in front of them, but yeah, actually my last ever NHL goal in Calgary.
Wow.
Pretty cool. Yeah,
That's a really cool memory.
yeah,
Actually, I was just having this conversation with a client of mine, just kind of talking about like what is your ideal environment for you to like play your best, and we got to talking about how like I know looking back in my career, for me, I actually played my best games when I had like my friends and family there. Always played really well when they were there. But I know for some people it's like the
yeah.
complete opposite. For you, like what did it make a difference for you at all?
I'd say yes and no. I don't know. They came to a lot of games. Just it so happened in NHL they didn't
Yeah.
make it to a ton. Maybe I don't know. Maybe my dad saw me score before that. I don't know. But it's hard to say. Sometimes friends and family like coming to town took more out of your day as a bit of a
Right.
distraction in a way.
Yeah.
But often I got to a good place where that was actually kind of helpful sometimes. Like you get a removed perspective for a couple days of the year and you play just fine and it's kind of nice, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I can't really say either way. I don't know if there really is yeah.
Yeah. So maybe neutral for yourself.
Yeah, like
Yeah. For me, definitely it makes a difference. It's actually there's research on this as well, looking at again just optimal level of performance. And so they were looking at like 3 different skill levels, like people who are dog shit because they've never done it before,
Yeah.
People
Do you
who
want to call them that or what?
yeah,
There's beginners, Matt.
sorry. Beginners, the newbies, the people excited to learn a new thing. Yeah, let's do that. Can we edit that last part out? Anyway, so yeah, beginners, and then people who are good but have tons of mastery left, and then like masters, people who are really excellent at the skills. And so what they were looking at is like if they had other people watching, how would that impact their performance at all three skill levels? For people that were like beginners, didn't really impact it at all because there isn't really.
They had no expectations.
Yeah, no expectations, right? So it was kind of fine. And then there's like the people in the middle group completely sabotage their performance.
I could see that. Yeah.
Just crippled
like
them.
That's the old cliff, like that anxiety cliff. Or
totally.
Yeah.
And then for the people that are more like masters, they would perform better. It's like when we know we are great at something and we have the opportunity to show other people, it actually can improve our performance. But even for masters, right? People who are playing at the NHL, people who are playing at the PGA, if their mindset going into the game is that like, I'm not very good, it's like they recede back into that medium talent group.
Medium band, yeah.
And then having people watch then sabotages their performance.
Yeah, interesting.
So yeah, it was one of the coolest studies that I came across. Really like that one.
I like that. It's a good general rule. Like even if you're at that level but you struggle with confidence, it's like this is something to keep in mind.
Yeah, really one of my favorite bits of research. And so for like you, in even just like talking about this, or even when you think about like playing hockey still on Thursdays, do you have a lot of like memories or moments that come up from your professional years, either like positive or negative?
Yeah, there's lots of moments. I feel like it's interesting. It's like trying to remember when you were a kid, and there's so many foggy times that, I don't know, some memories constructed or not. I don't know, right? But it's like, it's kind of like that. I see it now. It's been already 8 years, 9 years. And like, it's funny, like I'll somehow watch a game or watch some highlights or something, or like come across something. It's like, oh, I don't remember doing that play at all, which is like natural. I mean, thousands of plays a month in a hockey season.
Yeah.
But so it's hard to like, I don't know. I'm trying to find a good way to answer that.
I was more just like kind of thinking about how like, is there that sticky memory, that one that keeps kind of coming up, or are there some like positive memories that like you always kind of look back like fondly?
Yeah, there's both. There's highlights and kind of lowlights for sure. Anger and like frustrations at how things didn't go well.
Yeah.
Like some feelings of like injustice in a way.
Totally.
Good things I wish went better. Yeah, like it's a pretty mixed bag. It was a grind. It was hard. So it was like, you're going to get all kinds of different reactions to it. And it's going to, you don't look back and like, oh, those times were so great and so easy. You know what I mean? So it's like, it kind of is what it is at this point. It's like, I don't know if that.
No, I understand. Like,
I don't know if that's satisfying.
Maybe not the most satisfying answer, but more like a realistic response. Like, like I experienced it all because it was difficult. And when you do difficult things, there's pain and there's also just elation. Yeah. And so, I know I can even just see it in your face, like you going through the different highlight reels. Yeah. I think maybe unintentionally, the theme of our conversation today is just being able to accept like all different parts of yourself, and to notice that, there might be some shadow parts of yourself, some older parts of yourself that maybe you are embarrassed about, or you feel like shame or resentment towards, that like they're still going to come up. And that doesn't mean that you're a failure or you're messing up in some way, or that you're like doing something wrong. That like when we completely devote ourselves to something that we absolutely love, there's going to be so much heartbreak. There's going to be so much joy. You're going to have every experience that humans have. And like as an athlete, I think we experience higher highs and lower lows because we are fully committing every aspect of ourselves to that pursuit. And so even post-career, or even jumping into new competitive spaces, these parts are still with us. And I think you and I are both, even just in this conversation, like processing out loud that like we still have these experiences, and it's kind of surreal that we kind of have these moments still. So yeah, it was just really cool, like kind of hearing you share some of those stories too.
Yeah, I always loved talking, and just like, whether I liked it or not, when I first retired, I'd get these thoughts and kind of process all this stuff and stay up at night kind of angry at various things that happened. And like, it never really quite ends, even though I'm a little better at like turning some of that stuff down, because like, hey, concerned mind, you're not wrong, but like there's other ways I can spend my time right now, or I need to get to bed, or you get better.
Yeah.
Be like, okay, is this really, do I need to process this again right now? Like, maybe not.
Right.
But yeah, no, you can't avoid it forever. You need that time to be creative with yourself and to
Yeah. Well, I'm really looking forward to being able to explore that, and even like learning from you what kinds of environments or what teams, like different parts of yourself, were able to kind of either reveal themselves more or retreat kind of into the background. So yeah, again, really appreciate having these really open conversations, and you even challenging me a bit today. Yeah. And looking forward to our next chat. So again, for those of you that are listening to this, would really just appreciate the old like and subscribe. We feel like these conversations can really hit home for a lot of people. So if you know someone that they would really benefit from listening to this, then pass it along. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.